Hi, 5th grade. Today you're going to be doing Module 1, Lesson 15, and this is actually going to be our last lesson of Module 1, so hooray for that. And for today's lesson, you should have these notes out on your desk right now. So these are the Lesson 15 notes. So please, please, please have that out. Now remember, everything that I have on the board, you should have on your notes. So make sure you're following along with me over here. Now we are going to start off with a similar looking problem to what you have been doing so far. The only big difference with today's lesson is that I am going to have problems that normally in 4th grade you would see like maybe the answer is 2 remainder 1. But in this case today we're going to learn how to no longer end our problems with remainders. We're actually going to figure out past the remainders and get a final answer. And usually these are going to be into like our decimal places, and we're going to see how that works today. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first problem is 1 7/10 divided by 2. So my first step is I need to set up my place value chart. I have most of the place value chart set up, but I still need to show what my place value discs look like, and I need to show what my groups are going to look like at the bottom. So I have 1, 1, so I'll put 1 dot in my ones place. I have 7/10, so I'll draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And at the bottom, I need to have 2 groups. So there is group number 1, and there is group number 2. And this is where I will be sending all of my different dots. Now, I am going to start with this 1, 1, but this 1, 1 cannot be divided equally between these 2 groups. So I'm going to circle it to remind myself that I'm going to be moving it over into the 10ths place. This 1, 1, remember, becomes 10 tenths, so just like the last lesson. So I'm going to draw that down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now I need to, now I have plenty of dots, I can split them up. So I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So I am left with nothing in my ones. And then I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in one of my groups. And normally you would, if you were to do your standard algorithm, you would probably get 8 tenths remainder 1. And we would have stopped there. So I have this 1 dot left over, except right now I'm not going to stop. So I'm going to catch us up with our standard algorithm so you kind of get an idea of what this looks like, and then we'll come back to our place value chart. So we said that 2 cannot go into 1. So if I think about it, 2 times nothing fits into 1. So I will think of 2 times 0 is 0, 1 minus 0 is 1, and then I'll bring down that 7. Now 2 goes into 17. We said that would fit into it 8 times. So I'll write number 8 up there. And 2 times 8 is 16, which gives us that remainder of 1. Now normally I have nothing else that I would bring down. So in problems from like 4th grade, for example, you would write 0.8 remainder 1. And you probably have seen problems like this. But now that we're in 5th grade, we are no longer going to just have remainders. We are now going to figure out what we can do past this. So, for example, over here, I have this 1/10 that was left over. Just like this 1, 1 that was left over, I'm going to bring it over into my hundredths place, and I'm going to make it into 10 hundredths, because 1/10 equals 10 hundredths. And then I'm going to split these 10 hundredths up between my 2 groups. So cross off my dot, put it in the box, and so on until I have no dots left over. I can evenly split everything, and I am left with 5 dots in one of these groups. So I'll have a 5 in my hundredths place, Now over here you might be kind of confused, like how in the world do I get that number 5 up here? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend my problem just a little bit, and I'm going to add a 0 right here, because what's going to happen is this 0, I'm going to bring this 0 down, and this 0 makes this now 10. Just like how when I had this 1 1, or this 1/10, I brought it over and it became 10 hundredths. So over here now I have 10 hundredths. And I think about how many times can 2 fit into 10, or 2 times what is 10? Well, 2 times 5 is 10. So then that fits, and I subtract, and now I'm left with a remainder of 0. So my final answer for this problem is 85 hundredths. Remember, we can always check our answer. I just take everything that's on the outside and see if it matches the inside. So I have 85 hundredths times 2. 2 times 5 is 10. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 1, which is 17. 0 times 2 is 0. Plus 1 is 1. Bring down that decimal. And again, I am left with 1 7/10. So this all works out. Take a second to make sure all of this is in your notes, and let's move on to the next problem. So for our next problem, we are going to be doing this all over again, except now we have now we're dividing it into more groups. So for example, I have 2 6/10 divided by 4, so I need to put 2 place value discs in my ones place. And I need 6 place value discs in my tenths place. I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I'm showing you 2 6/10. But remember, I am dividing this by 4, so I need to have 4 groups. So I'll create my 4 groups. 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll extend these lines so they actually look like groups. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 groups on all of my place values. So now I can start divvying up all of my different numbers. Now I run into a problem right here already. I have 2 1s and I have 4 spots, so I can't evenly divide them. So I'm going to circle these and move them over into the tenths place. And those 2 1s being made into tenths makes 20 tenths. Remember, 1 1 makes 10 tenths. So 2 1s make 20 tenths. So let's draw those 20 tenths. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So right now what I have is 10, 20, and then 6 more tenths. So 26 tenths all together. I'm going to put a 0 right here, because I have 0 1s for my number. And then I'm going to show you what this looks like as well in our standard algorithm. So remember, I've kind of put this little multiplication symbol up here to remind me, just like another easier way to do these kinds of problems. So 4 fits into 2, not at all. So 4 times nothing fits into 2. So then I do 4 times 0, which is 0. 2 minus 0 is 2, and then I bring down that next place value. Then I now need to figure out how many times can 4 fit into 26. Now it's going to take me a long time to cross off all these dots, so I'm just going to think about in my head, 4 times what fits into 26? So I can do 4 times 5, but that's only 20, so maybe I could do 4 times 6, and that is 24, and I think that's as close as I'm going to get. So I'm going to put a dot right here, my decimal moves up, and I'm going to think about 4 times 6 is 24, and then I subtract, and I get 2. And over here I'm going to show that same thing. So since I put this 6 up here, that means that each of these boxes are going to have 6 dots in them. So I'm going to do that now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And normally you would mark these off, put them in a box, and so on. There's 26 of them, so that would take a really long time in this video, and I don't want to totally bore you guys. So just if you want to do this, that's totally fine. You can do this on your own in your notes, but I'm just doing a quicker version of it. So I'm going to put a 6 in my tenths place because there are 6 dots in each of my groups. But the important part to remember is that only 24 of my place value discs were used. So that means that 2 of these are still left over. And those 2 tenths are going to become, surprise, surprise, 20 hundredths. Because 1 tenth makes 10 hundredths. So 2 tenths makes 20 hundredths. So we have a whole bunch more dots to make. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Whew, that's a lot of dots to make. And remember over here, normally when you were in 4th grade, you would have said, okay, 6 tenths, remainder 2. But we're big 5th graders right now. So we are going to extend this line, add a 0, and then bring this 0 down. And now I need to figure out how many times can 4 go into 20 hundredths. And over here, I also have 20 hundredths, so this is a good way to check your work. My place value charts and my standard algorithm are matching up right now, so I kind of know I'm on the right track. So again, with my 20 hundredths, normally, yes, I would cross them off and put them in a box. But I'm just going to do it over here just to save some time. And I'm going to think about 4 times what is 20. Well, I know that 4 times 5 is 20, so I'll put a 5 right here. And then I'll multiply 4 times 5 is 20. I'll subtract. I don't have a remainder, so I'm finally done. And my final answer is 65 hundredths. Then you could also check your work with the dots. So I cross off a dot, put it in a box. And each of these boxes should have 5 place value discs in them. So eventually your place value charts will look something like this. And remember, the place value chart is great to first help you out, but eventually we do just want to do the standard algorithm because it does save time and it's a lot easier for us to complete. Alright, so make sure you pause the video, make sure all of this is in your notes right now, and then we are going to move on to the next problem. So you should be flipping over your sheet to the back. So now we have just a standard algorithm, and you should be looking at the back of your notes. And we are going to be dividing, so this is problem number 3. We are going to be dividing 17 divided by 4. So I'm just taking a whole number, 17, and I'm dividing it by 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just solve like I would usually, except for we're not doing the place value chart for this problem. We're just doing the standard algorithm. So my first step is I think about how many times can 4 fit into 1, or 4 times what fits into 1. Well, 4 times nothing fits into 1, so I'll put a 0 up here. And I'm thinking about 4 times 0 is 0, 1 minus 0 is 1, and then I bring down that 17. Yes, you can just skip ahead to thinking about how many times can 4 fit into 17, but if it helps you to put that 0 up there so you can keep track of your place values, you can go right on ahead and do that. So we have 4 times what fits into 17? Well, I know that 4 times 4 is 16, and 16 is as close as we're going to get to 17 without going over. So I'll put a 4 up here. So 4 times 4 is 16. And then I'll go ahead and subtract. So I have 17 minus 16, which is 1. But remember, we're not in 4th grade anymore. I don't just stop with 4 remainder 1. I'm going to extend this a bit so I can continue my problem. I will add a 0 so that I have a new place value to bring down. And now I will continue my problem. So now I'm thinking about 4 times what fits into 10. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 is as close as we're going to get to 10 without going over. So I'll put an 8 right here. And then I'll do 10 minus 8. 10 minus 8, I borrow from the 1, that becomes 0. This 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 8 is 2. and I still have a remainder. So if you still have a remainder after adding this next 0, you get to continue on. So we get to keep going. So I'm going to extend my line a little bit farther. I will add another 0, so I have another place value to bring all the way down here. And now I'm trying to think about how many times can 4 fit into 20. Well, 4 times what equals 20? 4 times 5 is 20. So I have 4 times 5, which is 20. And then I can go ahead and subtract, and I'm finally left with 0. Now, when you look at your answer, it kind of looks like it's 425. But it's definitely not 425. Remember when we first started this problem, we had 17 divided by 4. So I'll write that down here so you can see it. 17 divided by 4. So that means that this 1 was in the tens place, this 7 was in the ones place, which means that this 0 is in the tenths place. Which means that I can put a decimal right here, because in between my ones and my tenths, I have a decimal place. And then that decimal place will just move up here. And that gives me my final answer of 4 and 25/100ths. All right, let's move on to our last problem together. Please make sure you pause the video and have all these notes down. And our final problem together is another standard algorithm. We are taking 22 divided by 8. So for this problem, if you want to try and pause the video, try this one on your own, and then you can see how I complete it. So our first step is, you should have paused the video, tried it on your own, and then we'll see how we do together. All right, so we have 8. 8 cannot fit into 2, but 8 can fit into 22. So I think about 8 times what can fit into 22? Well, I could do 8 times 3, but that's 24, so that's too much. So I'll try 8 times 2. And remember, since I'm saying that I want to fit into 22, this 2 needs to be above 22. So if I put the 2 here, I'm saying that 8 fits into 22 2 times, but there, so it gets really confusing. Make sure you have it lined up at the correct place value. So we do 8 times 2, which is 16, and then I can subtract. So I can't do 2 minus 6, so I borrow from the 2, becomes a 1. This 2 becomes a 12. We do 12 minus 6, which is 6. And now I am left with 2 remainder 6. Remember, I don't want that. I'm going to add a decimal place just to remind myself that now I'm moving into the tens place. I'm going to extend this, add a 0, bring down the 0. And now I need to figure out how many times can 8 fit into 60. And this is where it really helps if we know our facts. You can also try skip counting. So like I think 6 times 8 is 48. That doesn't really work. So then maybe I could try 8 times 7 instead. So then we could do 8 times 7, which is 56. And then I can go ahead and subtract from there. So we do 60 minus 56. I will borrow from the 6, it becomes a 5, that's 0, becomes a 10. 10 minus 6 is 4, and I still have a remainder, so I need to add another 0 and continue on. So now I'm thinking about how many times can 8 fit into 40, so 8 times what equals 40? Well, I could do 8 times 5, and 8 times 5 is 40. And that leaves me with a final remainder of 0. So you should have all of these notes down on your notes, and then you are going to try the last 2 problems. Make sure you check your work for me as well before you show me your answers. And then if you get those correct, you will move on to the problem sets. Excellent job today, and please let me know if you have any questions.